trouble so hard. Oh, Lord, trouble.
Moby's Play album has to date sold almost 5 million copies worldwide. Its success has put Moby, previously seen as a music industry outsider, completely at the heart of the mainstream. His earlier albums had established him as a leading light in the world of techno music. Play's combination of early 20th century black vocals and late 20th century dance beats created something that almost anyone could like. His music is now impossible to avoid. Songs like Honey, Run On and Natural Blues are mainstays in your radio, TV, movie soundtracks and the Lord knows advertising. Every single track on Play has been used to sell something, yet what it sells is rarely what its sleeve notes would indicate are important to Moby. Veganism, Christianity, human and animal rights. It's just one of many contradictions surrounding Richard Melville Hall. Born to a wealthy white professor teaching in impoverished Harlem, his early death meant that Moby was raised by his impoverished widow in Darien, Connecticut.
Growing up as the only child of a single parent and in a town where there were lots of really stable big families, and growing up as one of the only poor families in a very wealthy town, and growing up with a mother who was sort of a bohemian hippie in a town that was very conservative, I think that's instilled in me a sort of lifelong sense of being an outsider. But then at some point, it happened to me after adolescence, I realized that most of the interesting cultural figures of the 20th century were also insecure outsiders. And then, you know, a lot of my heroes became people who sort of made disenfranchisement and outsider status seem very romantic. And suddenly, the people who represented the status quo, the people who represented the mainstream, seemed like anti-heroes, you know, and they were the people to be fought against, you know, the captain of the football team and the people who were popular and wealthy. They were the ones who represented sort of like, you know, static, archaic culture, where it was the disenfranchised outsider, you know, my heroes who were like, you know, musicians, writers, architects, poets, what have you. They were the ones who, to me, represented this sort of outsider ideal. I started playing music about 26 years ago. I'm 35 years old now, and I started playing music when I was around 9 years old. And I started out just sort of playing guitar, and my mother had a painting studio that she shared with a rock band. So I would, while I was waiting for her to finish painting, I would sit and I taught myself how to play drums, and yeah, basically just being surrounded by musical instruments. My mother was also a pianist, so I would sit in front of the piano and teach myself how to play piano. Music to me was always just something that played a very significant role in my life. It wasn't something I thought of as a job. It was just something I spent all my time doing. Like, I have friends who go to work and their job lasts from 9 in the morning until 6 in the evening, 5 days a week, and that's their job, but they'd sort of define themselves through the rest of their life. You know, they might be an attorney at work, but that's not really how they think of themselves. They think of themselves as, you know, going home and going out to movies with their friends and playing tennis, whereas to me, I strictly define myself through my work. You know, that is, my life's work is my life, is making music.
At 19, Moby moved to New York to study philosophy at State University, but wasted little time establishing himself as a DJ on New York's club scene.
You can't make your living going down to the local, you know, the local disco and sitting around playing guitar, but you can make your living going down to the local disco playing records. So I taught myself how to DJ and was DJing 3 or 4 nights a week. A, because I enjoyed it, but B, it was also a way to sort of make money and pay the rent and be involved in music at the same time. I was making music in my bedroom, which is where I make all my records. I mean, I think as long as I've been making music, I think I've only made 2 or 3 songs in outside studios. You know, I pretty much do everything at home in my bedroom. And I was working on this song, and then I watched the first episode of Twin Peaks, and I heard the strings from Laura Palmer's theme, and I just fell in love with them. And so I put the strings on top of this song I was working on, and it made a nice little fit.
hit single Go, with its something borrowed, something new format, established the blueprint for Moby's later success, but a proper follow-up was to take some years.
I was signed to this teeny little record company in New York called Instinct Records, and they'd put out, I think, 2 or 3 other singles. The biggest selling one had sold 4,000 copies. And when we first put out Go, I was desperate. I thought, okay, if we sell 4,000 copies, I'm going to be the happiest musician in the world, because the single I had put out before Go sold 2,000 copies. And I was like, wow, wouldn't that be great to be in the ranks of musicians who actually sell 4,000 copies of a single? And then it went on to be a top 10 record in England, and I don't know, I think it sold, 500,000, 1 million copies, so certainly surprised me. And then after I made Go, I made a bunch of other singles under different names, because the label I was signed to in New York, I was pretty much their only artist. So I'd make singles under different names, so it'd make it seem like they had a lot of different artists. And then I spent about 1.5 years trying to get off of that label. They had signed me to a terrible contract, as often happens. And I spent 1.5 years in a nasty legal battle trying to get off. And while I was trying to leave the label, I spent my time touring and doing remixes. And so basically that's why it took a while until the first real album, Everything Is Wrong, came out.